You get a tip. You get a tip. You get a tip. You all get tips. 2020 has been tough on so many levels, but now it's coming to an end. And while celebrating the holidays are going to be modified this year, there are things that are still going to be around. Festive decorations, holiday music, and in NYC, holiday tipping. In New York, if you live in a building with staff such as a super, doorman, porter, garage attendant, handyman, etc., it is an unwritten rule that residents tip during the holidays. I mean, you don't have to, but it's the same as you don't have to say thank you if somebody does something nice for you. It's just socially polite and customary. Yeah, you can pull a Monica and Rachel and bake cookies for your super, but in reality, cookies don't really pay the bills. And this year has been quite extraordinary. Maintenance staff in New York City were considered essential workers, and they've been quite essential to the many people who had to work from home this year. They dealt with more packages, more food deliveries, more waste, and just more upkeep in general. Not to mention keeping up with the health protocols that were set in place by the city. So the question isn't really whether you should tip or not, because guess what? You should tip. The question is how much. Since the act of tipping itself is an unwritten rule, it's going to be hard to find rules that govern an unwritten rule. But there are so many articles on the interwebs that cover this, and the most comprehensive of them all that I've found was the one written by Brick Underground, and I have the link down below if you want to read the whole thing. But in this video, I'm just going to summarize the important bits. So let's get started. Tipping in general will depend on what part of New York you live in, the type of building you reside in, and how involved the staff is with your day-to-day activities. But in general, there are certain levels of the tipping hierarchy, as you might call it. At the very top is the super, and the next tier below that is a doorman or concierge, and the tier below that are porters, handymen, maintenance staff, etc. If you have garage attendants, the amount to tip them is somewhere in between a doorman and a porter, and we'll go into this in detail. So let's start with the super. Super is short for building superintendent or building supervisor. They are responsible for the general maintenance of the entire building. They're responsible for the repairs. They make sure that the garbage and recycling is taken care of and that the property is always clean. They're also there to make sure that you moving in and moving out runs smoothly. If you're locked out of your apartment, you can call the super. If your oven is on fire, you can call the super. If you see cables hanging out from under your AC unit and you don't know what to do with it, you can call the super. Usually if a building only has one person on staff, it usually is a super. So how much should you tip a super? Well, according to Brick Underground, the average is anywhere from $75 to $175, with a broad range of $50 to $500. You might be thinking that's a wide, broad range, but the range of the types of buildings in New York are that broad as well. If you hardly interact with your super, I would tip on the lower end of this average, but if you have employed a lot of their services this year, like those dangling cords under the AC unit, then I would tip on the higher end. The doorman and concierge. These two terms are mixed interchangeably. Usually a building would only have a doorman. If you have a concierge, then duties get separated a little more. But if you do have a concierge, they're usually the ones to make reservations for you, call you a cab, provide recommendations, and they usually have a direct line to maintenance if you cannot call your super for any reason. Everyone has a thing that they won't compromise on when they're apartment hunting. For me, it's a dishwasher and an in-building washer and dryer. But for some people, they won't compromise on a doorman. For them, a doorman is a must. And I get it, having a doorman is so convenient. When I first moved to New York, I temporarily lived with a friend and they happened to have a doorman. That's something I did not appreciate until I moved to a building that did not have one. They screen visitors and guests, they sign packages, And if you're not living in NYC and you're thinking to yourself, why is this so important? Well, I can tell you that packages in New York City are a YouTube video in of itself, because it's just, for some reason, it's just so hard to get right. And I'm actually thinking of creating a YouTube video on this. Hopefully that will come true. If you need help with your luggage or groceries, you can employ your doorman. If you need help hailing a cab at 2 in the morning, you can call your doorman. If it were normal times and you're at work and you have an out-of-town friend coming to visit, you can leave your keys with the doorman. If you left your curling iron on and you're halfway across the city, you can call your doorman. You can also ask your doorman to keep an eye on your dog walker when they come pick up your dog in the middle of the day, if you so happen to have a dog walker. Or you can just ask your doorman to keep an eye on things while you're gone. So how much do you tip a doorman? According to the article that I linked below, the average is anywhere from $25 to $150, with a broad range of $10 to $1,000. I realize this range is quite large, but it really does depend on how involved your doorman is with your day-to-day life. Some people, especially families, do employ the help of their doorman quite a lot. And some people, like me, not so much. I know individuals who have known the doorman of their building since they were children. And that says something. And I could imagine that family would be tipping their doorman a lot more. And seniority does play into the amount of tips that some people give their doormen and other staff. It really depends on how much you employ their services. Do you have them receive a lot of your food orders and deliveries? Do you use a laundry and dry cleaning services and leave it with them for pickup and delivery? Do you ask them to watch your kids in the lobby while you do a quick errand? Do you ask for help with the groceries pretty often? Some people tip their doormen year-round as they ask for requests, and holiday tipping is added gratitude. Porters and handyman. Porters help with keeping the building clean and maintained. They are the ones who usually handle the building's trash and recycling, clean the common areas like the laundry room, lobby, hallways, and gym, and help with the super on general maintenance. And the handyman, as you guessed it, is pretty handy and does repairs. So how much should you tip your porter and handyman? The average is between $20 and $30, with the broad range of $10 to $75. Though you may not interact with your porter or handyman as often as you would perhaps a doorman or your super, remember that they are part of the staff that keeps the building a well-oiled machine. So when should you give your tips? It's customary to give your tip between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but there's this unwritten grace period to about late January, maybe early February. I like to give my tips the week before Christmas. And how should you hand it over? Cold hard cash is preferred, but some people recommend writing checks to prevent sticky fingers. I like to tip in cash because I trust my super enough to distribute the envelopes to the right person. And speaking of which, it's really not common to give flourish to tip giving. An envelope with their names on it is what's customary. The important thing here is that you put your unit number on the envelope. Forget your name, it's okay as long as you have the unit number on your envelope, because staff may not remember your name, but they will remember where you live. You can hand the tips over personally to each of the staff members, but I salute someone who can do that. I just give the stack of envelopes to my super and he distributes it among the staff. So there you have it, holiday tipping in NYC, another idiosyncrasy of living in the Big Apple. Do you have any questions or comments about holiday tipping? Please comment down below. And if you like this video, please subscribe and like. It would mean so much and it'll be well appreciated. Till next time, I wish you a happy holidays.